Hey, want to get notified when I post new videos? Hit the bell icon next to subscribe. Now, does it say something weird like, this action is disabled for channels making kids content? Well, that's a f***ing lie. Just resubscribe, then hit the bell. It should work. Okay, but you actually have to subscribe again. Hello? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first Legend Survival Rule Set Breakdown video. Here's what you can expect from this video moving forward. We're going to be talking about the Season 1 rule set. We're going to be breaking down how to play this game mode. We're going to be talking about some of the inspiration that I took from other existing game modes to create Legend Survival. And we're going to be talking about potential patching ideas for future seasons of Legend Survival. Full disclosure, guys, we're in the middle of playtesting Legend Survival right now. If you're keeping up with Legend Survival on my channel or Telecon's channel or Clum's channel, then you've probably already seen some of these rules discussed. And if you've seen episode 0 on my channel, then you've definitely seen some of the core rules discussed. But I'd like to break those down a little bit more for you so that it starts to make sense conceptually for you. So what is Legend Survival? Legend Survival is a custom old school RuneScape mode that assumes a role-playing aspect onto each player. The mode utilizes the in-game mode Group Ironman, where players have a shared storage system, life pool, and content restrictions that normal Ironman players have. The twist here is that each player must select a legend or class, which will be listed throughout this video. Each legend has main skills, tertiary skills, passive bonuses, and starting items. Legends also gain individual tokens, which can help boost team morale and unlock more content at different intervals. Now, Legend Survival can only be played on the Group Ironman mode, and it utilizes all available aspects of Ironman mode, such as Hardcore and Ultimate Ironman rule sets. Upon selection of their respective legend role, players will be utilizing the random chunk picker to select their spawn location. A Chunk Picker V2 is a great website to use for this. I'll be linking that website in the description of this video. Legends tokens are tracked using the Personal Currency Tracker plugin in RuneLite. I'll be linking that plugin as well in the description. After the selection of the spawn chunk, new chunks are unlocked when a legend completes all available tasks listed in a random chunk picker. They can also unlock a new chunk every time a legend gains 50 total levels. Now, fresh accounts have 32 total levels. In order to make the math easy to track, the first total level chunk is unlocked at 75 total level. Now, legends have specific skills that they can use. Each one is different. Depending on your spawn location, you may have tasks that you can't complete. Tasks that cannot be completed due to locked skills do not require completion for the spawned legend. There is an exception, as legends do have tertiary skills, so with that exception, the legend will gain access to that skill after getting the requirements. Therefore, tasks that include tertiary skills are still required to complete the chunk. A new adjacent chunk is selected using the chunk picker. Now, each legend has tertiary skills that are unlocked when a certain number of chunks are completed by the player. The first tertiary skill unlocks after 5 chunks are completed. The final tertiary skill unlocks after 15 chunks are completed. One of the most useful RuneLite plugins we've found during our playtesting for Legend Survival Season 1 is the RuneLite Goal Tracker. RuneLite Goal Tracker allows you to correlate chunk IDs and names to a list of tasks. It also allows you to populate your task in-game for easy tracking. All these tasks are gathered from the Random Chunk Picker V2 website, which can have some errors depending on how many chunks become unlocked. We typically work those by a case-by-case basis, but I do really enjoy using the goal tracker, especially when it comes to recording, because it makes everything all on one screen. Now, several skills are locked behind tertiary skills, as well as talking to different NPCs in the game. I wanted to make it as balanced as possible depending on the legend roster that your team selects. So there's a couple of caveats to expect here. The first caveat is the Slayer skill. Rather than locking Slayer behind certain combat legends, I decided to make Slayer unlocked for all legends. However, you can only kill monsters with your combat style that is unlocked on that particular legend. So if your task is a ranged task and you've got a melee-only legend, you cannot complete that task until ranged is unlocked. Legends must speak to Turiel whenever they spawn in to accept their first task. Doing so will allow the player to speak to other Slayer Masters in the game as long as the combat level requirement and quest requirements are met. There is an exception to this rule. The Curse Nomad exception allows for the curse tokens to lock Slayer However, Cleanse can unlock Slayer for the Nomad. There will be more on that on the Cursed Nomad class breakdown video, which will be releasing in the future. Now, how did I come up with the idea for Legend Survival? Well, I've talked about this a little bit in my Taliman series, but I tend to find a lot of inspiration watching other YouTube content creators. The main inspiration behind Legend Survival comes from the idea of wanting to make the chunk-locked Ironman experience more fun without taking away too much of the grind. I also wanted a group Ironman experience with the chunk-locked experience because I always feel like RuneScape is more fun to play with friends. It also allows for game modes to be more accessible to the casual player. Contrary to popular belief, a large majority of viewership watching RuneScape videos or playing along on these RuneScape videos are either casual players or returning players to the game mode. So it's important when you're making up rule sets to have the accessibility features as entry level as possible and as easy to understand as possible. I'm not saying that chunk-locked Ironmans are hard to play or too difficult to understand for non-players. What I am saying is that the grind behind chunk-locked Ironman can be very daunting for the viewer to understand or to grasp. A great example would be Verf's current series, his Extreme Chunk Ironman. The grind behind that has taken thousands and thousands of hours for him, and he hasn't even come out of his spawn chunk yet. It's a great series, by the way. Check it out if you get the time. So with respect to the Extreme Chunk Ironman series, I ended up coming up with the idea to have legends based off of my previous experience with a game called Dungeons and Dragons. Some of you may be familiar with that, some of you may not. But essentially, one of the main aspects of Dungeons and Dragons is the camaraderie that you need with your teammates in order to progress through any given campaign. I wanted to take a portion of that experience and implement it into a restricted Ironman series, because I feel that the more restrictions you have on your account, the more attached you become to its progress. Something about a dopamine release here and there. I promise there's a correlation somewhere. With that in mind, I was able to come up with the concept for Legend Survival. The only thing that was left was to actually come up with the legends. I did mention earlier in this video that we would be doing class breakdown videos for all 8 of Season 1's Legend Survival characters. In fact, the first one will be coming out as soon as possible. You'll likely see it this week if you're watching this at the time of upload. Now, before we can understand the overarching rules, let's discuss the gameplay loop. Your average session of Legend Survival should be filled with teamwork, strategic map traversal, and inspiring new ways to play Old School Runescape. The main aspect for this game mode is its role-playing element. The team of legends should work together to accomplish goals while simultaneously progressing their accounts and unlocking individual map chunks. There are exceptions and fail-safes built into the rule set to ensure gameplay is seamless for all legends. However, it's important to understand that not everything is perfect the first time through. Patches and amendments will be implemented as often as possible until stability is reached for this game mode. So it's very possible you'll see another rule breakdown video in the future. For now, let's focus on Season 1's rules. Here's a couple of goals you can expect if you're playing as a legend throughout this series. These rules are set in place to accelerate gameplay mechanics. Looking at the total level for all the RuneScape accounts, at 500 total level, legends can choose a secondary combat style. If you're playing as a skiller or adventurer class that does not have access to combat, you would unlock your first combat style at 500 total level. What are the combat styles available? Well, I'm glad you've asked. This is how we've grouped our skills together. You have attack and strength as one combat style. You have either magic and defense or ranged and defense. Now, the prayer skill is unlocked for legends when they reach total level 500. Some legends already have prayer at spawn. At 1000 total level, legends unlock all combat skills. The second combat style for skillers and adventurers is unlocked at total level 1000. If you're playing as a combat specialist, at 1000 total level, you have access to all combat skills. If you're playing as a skiller, you're going to be behind in the combat stats, but ahead in your non-combat stats. At 1500 total level, all skilling legends unlock all combat options. If you've seen episode 0, then you've likely heard a couple of the endgame options available in Legend Survival mode. Let's go over them again just so they're all in one place. Legend Survival mode is intended to be played as a group However, each legend is randomly selected when playing with 5 members, and it's possible your team won't be able to complete raids, bosses, or other high-level content due to class limitations. Here are some examples for endgame goals that can bring your session to a close. Note that these goals are separate and vary in difficulty. For 5 players, you can reach a combined total level of 6,500. 4 players, you reach a combined total level of 5,000. For 3 players, you reach a combined total level of 3,500. And for 2 players, you reach a combined total level of 2,500. The next endgame role would be each legend completes a Grandmaster quest. Each legend enters Prifddinas. An optional goal would be a single legend is carried into Prifddinas. You then have your raids. Raids 1, 2, and 3. Once 3 comes out, will be optional for endgame rule sets. You can either set it as receiving all unique drops across the roster, or for each legend to receive all unique drops, or for one of the legends on your team to receive a purple drop. Legends can also complete the God Wars dungeon boss drop table. The same rules apply there, where the party can complete drop table with individual drops combined, or the entire roster can complete the entire drop table for all of God Wars. For the more casual players that are looking for an entry-level player versus monster experience, another rule set can be considered here by collecting at least 30 unique boss items party-wide, from a minimum of 10 different bosses. This next rule should be implemented on every Legends survival roster, where the legends achieve Master Rank. Master Rank is achieved when you get base level 60 tertiary skills and base level 70 main skills. Legends also need to use at least 5 tokens per member on their team. Let's talk a little bit more about tokens. What are tokens, and why are they important? Individual tokens can help boost team morale and unlock more content at different intervals, and each token is different for each legend class. Can tokens be used at any time? No. Tokens will specify when in the game phase you can use them. Some legends have them at different times, so you'll need to be vigilant of your roster. Can I use tokens on teammates? You sure can. The Scout, Bard, Sorcerer, Necromancer, Cursed Nomad, and Guardian can use their tokens on all party members. The Huntsman's Bounty token unlocks the randomly selected boss chunk for all party members. The exception here is the Artisan's Renown token. This is the only token that cannot be used on teammates. Now, in order to help with the scaling and continually progressing the game, another rule set was put in place to help legends actively pursue new skills. When you complete 30, 60, and 90 chunks, your legend will be able to select one new non-combat skill to unlock. That's a total of 3 different skills you can unlock along the way. Once a legend has completed 150 chunks, they will unlock all non-combat skills. This is super important for those skilling and adventurer legends because their main aspect is going to be unlocking as many chunks as possible. Here is a few more minor rules to understand while playing Legends Survival. With regard to minigames, if a minigame with a grouping teleport is unlocked by a single legend in the party, all party members gain access to that teleport and minigame. For skilling bosses, if a legend unlocks a chunk containing a skilling boss, all skills required for killing the boss are unlocked inside the boss zone only. Now, there is an exception here. If the Huntsman uses his bounty token to unlock that chunk, then the Huntsman unlocks those skills, no questions asked. A couple examples to consider with the skilling bosses. Wintertot, for example, grants access to woodcutting, firemaking, fletching, construction, and farming. For legends that don't have access to firemaking on their own, if they unlock Wintertot, they will need to train firemaking outside of the Wintertot boss zone to level 50 in order to actually access Wintertot. Temperos grants access to cooking, fishing, and construction. Fishing level 35 is required to play the Temperos skilling boss, and therefore training fishing to level 35 outside of the boss zone is acceptable. What happens if my legend doesn't start with access to skilling boss required skills? Legends that gain access to a skilling boss chunk may train necessary skills outside of the boss zone. Legends cannot train those skills outside of the boss zone once the kill count reaches 1 or if the minimum level requirements to enter the zone are met. Legends Survival has several other ways throughout their game mode to unlock additional chunks for your team. The collection log, all unique drops reward an adjacent chunk per item. breakdown. This includes random event items, clue scrolls, and minigame armor sets. All random events are accessible to all legends regardless of location. The experience gained in random events is fair game. However, locked skills do not unlock regardless of experience gain. Look at the Evil Bob random, for example. You can gain fishing experience and magic experience in the Evil Bob random event. However, if your legend does not have magic or fishing unlocked at the time of receiving this random event, the experience is still fair game, but that doesn't mean you can train the skill. Experience lamps and tomes of experience are only usable on unlocked skills. Quests can be completed as long as the pre-requirements are met. Experience gained from quest completion is fair game, even if it awards experience to a locked skill. A good example of this would be the Restless Ghost, which can be completed on legends that do not have access to the prayer skill. Legends must have access to all chunks used in the quest line in order to complete the quest. Can I complete quests with no requirements that award experience in locked combat skills? Yes, as long as the quest does not require you to gain combat experience in locked skills outside of the completion reward. A good example of this would be the Waterfall quest. Can I complete quests with no requirements that award experience in locked non-combat skills? Yes, as long as the quest does not require you to gain non-combat experience in locked skills outside of the completion reward. Cook's Assistant is a good example. Completing clue scrolls rewards chunks. You can see how many chunks are awarded based off the difficulty of the clue scroll. Now keep in mind, you can also receive a unique drop whenever completing a clue scroll. In this case, you would stack the collection log rule and the clue scroll completion rule. It's possible to gain multiple chunk unlocks just off of completing a single clue scroll. Now keeping all of these basic rules in mind, how do you actually go about playing Legend Survival? When is it okay to unlock a chunk? When is it okay to not unlock a chunk? The best way for me to explain this is by looking at a similar order of operations that we see in most trading card games. I'm going to use a very similar structure that you would see in games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering here. So if you're familiar with those games, then you'll be familiar with how this rule set plays. Here's the beginning game phase. During the beginning game phase, you will select the legend that you would like to play. If you have 5 legends in your party, then you will need to randomly select those legends in order to allow for balancing. Once the legends are selected, you'll need to create your Group Ironman roster. Once your accounts are completed, and you've chosen your legends, you'll need to select your starting chunk. The first chunk is valid if there are no level or quest requirements to access it. The biggest exception to this rule is combat skills. If you're playing as a skiller or adventurer class, and the chunks that you select have kill tasks that are required to complete the chunk, then you will still need to complete those kill tasks, which means your skiller account will have to get 500 total level to unlock a combat stat to then come back and complete the kill tasks, which will then complete the chunk for you. Another rule to consider for the chunk phase is each legend has different skills and therefore has different requirements to complete a chunk. Let's say your spawn chunk has tasks that require you to mine iron ore, chop a U-log, burn a U-log, fletch a U-log, and fish for anchovies. The skill requirements there are 15 mining, 60 woodcutting, 60 fletching, 60 fire making, and 15 fishing. From this, you'll need to look at your own individual legend and match up the skills that you have unlocked for this chunk. Let's say you're playing as the Scout. The Scout has access to woodcutting, firemaking, fletching, and fishing. It does not have access to mining. Therefore, the chunk requirements would include everything on this list except for the mining task. You would simply complete or backlog that task in the chunk picker and complete the task that you have available. Now let's say that chunk also had a hunting requirement for you to catch a copper longtail. Copper longtails require a hunter level of 9. Assuming we're still playing as Scout here, the hunter requirement would also be a task requirement to complete that chunk. The difference between the hunter task and the mining task is that hunter is a tertiary skill for the Scout. Mining is not a tertiary or main skill. To summarize, chunk tasks are only required if it is a combat task, it is a main skill task, it is a tertiary task, or it is a completable quest task. You can decide amongst your party if you would like to include drop table tasks, diary tasks, and combat achievement tasks for an added layer of difficulty. Now that you've unlocked your first chunk, and you figured out which tasks are needed to complete this chunk, Here's where the game mode starts to get interesting. Once you've entered that first chunk, you cannot open a new chunk until you have either gained 50 total levels. At spawn, the first chunk unlock is at total level 75, which is a requirement of only 43 total levels for a brand new account. You can also open a new chunk if you receive a unique drop on the collection log, which can come from either random events, monster drops, minigame items, and several other options in the game. You can also open a new chunk if you're able to complete a clue scroll. Chunk unlocks vary based on the difficulty of that clue scroll. You can also open a new chunk if an active ability triggers the unlock phase. The prime example for this is the Guardian Legend class, which can complete quests to unlock an adjacent chunk. Now here's the trick. You unlock a new chunk when you meet the requirements above. However, you complete a chunk when all tasks are completed in a specific chunk. Completed chunk progression count towards unlocking tertiary skills. Remember that tertiary skills are unlocked when you have 5 completed chunks and then 15 completed chunks. Once a requirement is met, you then enter the unlock phase. During the unlock phase, you must choose an adjacent chunk to unlock. During the unlock phase, passive bonuses are checked by the party. If any chunks are unlocked using a Legend's passive or active bonus, you may open those chunks now. Please note that the passive bonus chunk unlocks do not count towards tertiary unlocks. You will still need to have 5 and then 15 chunks completed in order to have the tertiary skills unlocked. It's important to keep in mind that token abilities are triggered based off of the last chunk you have unlocked. So for starters, let's say I'm playing the Scout class. I just reached a 50 total level milestone, and I'm going to select a new chunk. My new chunk I'm going to select is east of Varrock Square. At 50 total level, east of Varrock Square is the first chunk that I unlock based off of meeting one of the requirements to unlock a chunk. Passive abilities are then put into play here. Scouts unlock an adjacent chunk for free if a fishing or farming location is inside that chunk. I would get Varrock Castle that has the tree patch for free because of my passive ability. Once the passive check is completed, you then go on to the token check. Whenever scouts gain 50 total levels, they get an orienteering token. Any token that is going to be put into use has to be used on the most recent chunk unlock. My most recent chunk unlock in this example is Varrock Castle. Therefore, my orienteering token needs to be used from this chunk as my starting chunk. This rule set is best explained in practice, so continue to follow Legend Survival Season 1 to see this rule set in play. Once the unlock phase is completed, you then move on to the end phase. The end phase is very simple. You double check that your adjacent chunks has completable tasks. Make note of your completed chunks. Tertiary unlocks are usable after the lock phase is completed. Once the end phase is completed, you go back into the lock phase. The cycle repeats itself. With all of your unlocked chunks, you now have free reign to move throughout the map that you have unlocked, and the rule set starts over. You can either gain 50 total levels, receive a unique drop on the collection log, complete a clue scroll, or an active ability is triggered. That is the general play cycle for Legend Survival. That covers just about every single rule I have come up with for Legend Survival. If you have any questions about any of the rules discussed in this video, or if you have questions about individual legends, how tokens work, how the rule set works, please go ahead and put them in the comments. Feel free to join the Discord and talk to me directly. Make sure you like the video, subscribe for more content, and I will see you guys in the next video.